Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the launch of this book and claim community. We're pretty excited to have you here. One quick housekeeping item. This event will be recorded. More on that in just a moment. My name is Quentin Barnes, working with SSC. I'm a program manager focused on transportation decarbonization market measures, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this community's secretariat. It's been a healthy body of work in anticipation of today, and I first just want to acknowledge our co-chair on the secretariat, RMI. So thanks a lot to RMI for being with us. Today you'll get to hear from some of us as well as some of the community, and you'll learn how to get involved in our work over the coming months. Again, thank you for being here amid busy schedules. So I consider all of us pretty lucky to be working in this exciting space. The potential for book and claim to expand activity and motivate decarbonization in heavy transportation is clear. The use of impact from and excitement about book and claim is expanding, most definitely, and that does come with excitement, also comes with its certain challenges. We have individuals and organizations present here today, as I'm seeing everyone hop in and some still hop in, who converse daily in book and claim terminology and methodology. And many of you, it actually bears thanking you and thanking them for their entire and early stewardship on pioneering projects. So you all know who you are. Thank you. We also have many present experienced transportation stakeholders in their own right who are reintegrating. We're curious how to get involved in book and claim. So today it's not really going to be possible to explain all we are not going to cover in this webinar. There's a lot going on, but to orient, I just want to explain a little bit about what we will be covering. This is going to be a launch, it's exciting, for and focusing on this community that we created here, bringing together and making space for all of the aforementioned stakeholders to focus on book and claim as a tool for heavy transportation decarbonization. We recognize there are other book and claim conversations and communities, so to say, and that's also a good thing. While this is not meant today to be an introduction per se to book and claim, this is rooted in the fundamentals of the concept as a chain of custody model, as well as its application to date for decarbonization. While not a map per se of current efforts, it is a state of the conversation, a context exploration, and of course, we hope this can serve as a useful on-ramp towards your increased involvement and familiarity with book and claim as you engage the subject, work on projects, and cooperate with other stakeholders out there in the wild. This community here, we're focused on voluntary book and claim application and practice. And also this webinar today will be an answer to a few basic questions of why this community? Why now? What are you planning on working on? When will you get started? We'll explore the 4 work areas SSC and RMI staff distilled almost a year ago from related workshops, conferences, and conversations. And these work areas are going to serve as organizing basis for the rest of 2023. We'll also end answering the question of how can I get involved? So please listen, do what's best, and consider kind of what fits your organization. And then please ensure that we hear from you. We're going to be large part depending on collaboration and conversation with you all as part of the community. So 2 last items before I hand over the mic. As mentioned, it's being recorded. We'll make that available in a follow-up email. We know timing considerations as well as your busy schedules, not everyone was able to make it. It will also be available in the first community newsletter on June 15th. There is Q&A as well. We're using a tool that will allow you to surface comments at any time and will help us answer questions at the end. So maybe use the link, snap a picture of the QR code, Note the that 7-digit number. We're all used to remembering 7-digit numbers. Many of us are, at least. And note that for future use. So now I invite Andrew Chen, Principal of Aviation Decarbonization at RMI, and Dan Smith to say a few words. Tell us a little bit about the state of the conversation and provide context for this community. Take it away, guys.
Thanks very much, Quentin. Just a quick audio check. I was having some computer issues, of course, right as this meeting was started. Great. Okay, excellent. So thanks for the introduction, Quentin, and welcome everybody. It's great to see this much interest and this many people joining already. Just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the market context and why, from a structural perspective, we think this work is so important when we look at decarbonizing particularly heavy freight transportation supply chains. And I'll throw out here now, when I say freight, I recognize that the passenger footprint, particularly in aviation, is also important. So freight means people as well, particularly when we're talking about commercial aircraft. So with that, fair amount of research that shows that unless we do something, greenhouse gas emissions associated with freight transportation, particularly heavy freight, are increasing and will continue increasing, which is, of course, exactly the opposite of what we need if we're going to meet global climate goals. So that's kind of that's setting the scene, number one. That's what we face in the freight transport market in general. This is all the more challenging, or that outlook is all the more challenging if we recognize that it's pretty expensive to decarbonize heavy transport operations. The solutions that we have out there, that carriers have out there, that all of us have in front of us for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions footprint of heavy transport are not cheap. And what that means is a freight transport service provider can't just out of the goodness of their heart reduce their greenhouse gas emissions footprint by implementing a costly solution in a market where their service is effectively a commodity. They cannot remain competitively viable, paying more for low emission transportation service, providing low emission transportation services, that is, with the cost of interventions to reduce freight emissions as they exist now. We also have a situation where structurally, the logistics market is one that's large, complex, and dynamic. You might have shippers who don't even know who is moving ultimately their cargo. You may have tens or more layer of subcontracting agreements where an organization that has a parcel that's moving by any mode of transport, particularly in road and ocean, might not even know what ship, truck their cargo is going to actually end up being on. So this generates a situation where we might have cargo shippers, or that is organizations that are looking to purchase a transportation service, who are willing to pay a premium for a low emission transportation service, but can't physically access that service for their people or their freight. And we're really trying to address through this market-based measures work that disconnect, where carriers, transportation service providers cannot do decarbonization actions out of the goodness of their heart and remain competitive in a commodity market. And where even those organizations who are willing to pay more for a low emission transportation service often cannot physically access that service. So we're trying to connect those dots, and there's a lot of demand for this in the marketplace. Andrew's going to talk a little bit about RMI's experience with this, but I wanted to start, like I say, by setting the scene for why this is so important. These challenges that we see outlined on this slide here, we've heard about in different flavors time and again from stakeholders in the SFC community, and that's what's led us to this work. So with that, Andrew, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, or the RMI perspective.
Sure, thanks, Dan, and appreciate the scene setting. I think, just to put it in the context of maybe a case study of aviation, we've been working very, very hard over the last several years through many collaborations and partnerships, including SABA, the Clean Skies for Tomorrow Coalition, to help develop and deploy this approach in aviation. And we call this the SAF certificate approach, which is very much under development today. I think it's been very clear to us in this work that we've been doing in aviation and some of the work we've recently started in the maritime sector as well, with a similar book and claim initiative that's under a pilot phase right now. It's very clear that in order for us to deploy this and scale this type of approach and address these critical issues, we really need alignment across several sectors and specifically the ones that we're talking about here today. So if we want a credible and a robust book and claim approach, simply put, we need to do that in collaboration and in coordination with stakeholders across multiple value chains, which is really why we're so excited here to be kicking off and launching this community initiative. If we flip onto our next slide, like we've noted, very excited here to be partnering with the Smart Freight Center, serving as the secretariat for this community, with the support and leadership from our governing board of Amazon, Deloitte, DPDHL, Shell, and World Energy. I'll note this is almost a complete list of our governing board. We've got one more member that we're just finalizing the final details on. So you'll see one more logo in there and on the website in the future, but really excited to get this work kicked off. I won't take any more time. Let me hand back over to Quentin, who's going to take us through a little bit more of the logistics and get us into our next section here.
Right on. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you laying some groundwork. As we answer this question here of kind of why this community, hopefully you can join me taking a brief stock of the community itself, and would love it if we could, hop into that link that you had there. And just curious, amongst this crew especially, had to take the opportunity to take stock of the conversation. Curious how many book and claim related conversations, webinars, etc. have you been a part of in the last 6 months? Book and claim is obviously it's a word that's been coming out of my mouth a lot, and it almost makes me think of Seinfeld stand-up or something like that. Very cool. Take a brief moment. Also, just hoping that link works with everybody. Remember, you can throw in a Q&A there as well as we progress through this conversation. We'll be checking those out towards the end. The other question we're curious to answer is what type of organization do you represent? We're really wanting to make sure that we're representing the broad base of the whole book and claim community. We've been having conversations with many of you over the years. Just curious who is represented here. Appreciate that. Right on. So I see a healthy number of folks using the other category. That's great. Didn't want to make the list too exhaustive. A lot of solution providers in here. That's amazing as well. Got a little bit of regulator government representation in there. Appreciate you. Perfect. It's great to see. All right, with about 81, 82 folks responding, please feel free to keep on responding. Maybe we can hop back in there and take a look at that, or share share some of the results in, see how the previous conversation is going. Yeah, right there with 70 people. All right. Definitely a healthy amount of book and claim being discussed, a healthy representation of the community, and I'm actually excited to have a bunch of quote unquote other or folks identifying that way. We really need to expand the number of folks who are involved in this community. So appreciate that. Thanks for that participation. To show another bit of context of who is part of this community, especially because, again, like I said, there are a lot of focused and varied conversations going on. I wanted to almost highlight a group of folks who probably are not here today. And it's kind of that group of people in this specific case who took the time to attend a recent side kind of breakout style conversation where SFP was asked generally about book and claim, and we all know what the type of event I'm talking about at a conference. A lot of buzz flying around. Some people are at the snack table, other people go to the breakout session. Scientific polling here isn't the point. What's notable, I think, is folks' experience with these terms of, 2/3 of respondents roughly identifying with insetting, fewer responding with book and claim. So, we're working each day in this subject, and not everybody is. And my point here is, we're going to be finding ourselves educating the next person who is trying to get involved, going to that next breakout session, curious about how they can potentially use this for decarbonizing heavy freight. And I want to kind of just invite everyone to embrace that challenge, and also recognize there are going to be bumps along the way in these conversations. We're going to be making mistakes, calculation, omission, or simply referring to something as we make space for a public that's actively seeking book and claim. So here's another just quick look at some search trends in history for the term book and claim over the last number of years, last decade here. And so what's basic, besides this just being a little bit up and to the right, the thing to note is 100 in the top of the graph is essentially the peak of interest, not necessarily people or anything. So in other words, the phrase about a year ago, and it's about close to that volume again, with much more consistent attention over the last year, especially. So that's exciting to see. And the idea of insetting similarly follows a much a same trend, and it's exciting to see that attention out there in the market be sustained by data. So excitement's building. More people are interested in utilizing book and claim. It makes sense. I would love to check in with two people who know this book and claim growth firsthand and can speak to that importance to their respective organizations, as well as the need for a coordinated approach in this space. So we will pass the mic first to Eleanor Bastian, Principal Program Manager of Amazon, and then on to Kim Carnahan as well, Head of Secretariat for Saba and AIM platform. Eleanor, can you hear us?
Thank you.
Right,
yes, I can. Thank you, Quentin. And hello, everyone. It's so great to be here and to see this engagement here. I'm Eleanor Bastian. I'm with Amazon. And at Amazon, we take a multi-prong approach to decarbonization. I'll just speak to air. We're investing in companies that are creating new sustainable technologies, including fuels like Infinium. And we're also purchasing SAF. We're one of the largest SAF buyers in the air freight space. And through that experience, we've really learned that book and claim is going to be an essential mechanism for us as we grow, as we see the market for SAF grow. And at the same time, across the company, we use every mode of transportation, and we found that same challenge. So we've been really happy to be part of this community for about a year, and really excited about where we're headed and the opportunity for all of us here to be part of creating a new high integrity mechanism that advances decarbonization, because we've only got 17 years until our climate pledge needs to be met. So thanks to everyone here for this event today. It's great to see some familiar faces, and I'm excited to really sort of get into this work more intensely over the rest of this year. I'll hand it back to you, Quentin. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you. Kim. All right. Mic check.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks
you so much. Can you hear me okay?
We're good.
Excellent. Yeah, as Quinn was saying, I'm Kim Carnahan. I manage both the advanced and indirect mitigation platform, the AIM platform, Asian Buyers Alliance, or SABA. For those of you who don't know, SABA is a joint initiative of RMI, one of our co-hosts today, and the Environmental Defense Fund. We are focused on driving investment in high quality, sustainable aviation fuel by putting in place the key pieces needed for a credible and transparent book and claim SAF certificate system, as Andrew mentioned earlier. We also run aggregate procurement of SAF certificates on behalf of our fast growing membership. So the kind of basis of what we're doing is a book and claim. And it's important for us that the principles that we're following within the aviation sector are aligned with the principles that are being followed in other sectors as well. SABA was a bit of a pioneer in the world of environmental attribute certificates because we, created this system that specifically facilitates the participation of aviation customers, who for the most part are the ones who are paying the premium associated with SAF. But in undertaking this pioneering work, it became really clear that there were some significant gaps in the broader architecture around GHG accounting and reporting, and those gaps were hindering the growth of SABA and the impact that we were able to have in the marketplace. That existing infrastructure simply hadn't been built to accommodate the rise in Scope 3 emissions reduction targets and the efforts to achieve them. So all of these developments in Scope 3, which were driven by, largely the Science Based Targets Initiative and the amazing work that they've been doing, actually calls for the creation of additional tools, additional clarity, like book and claim systems, but not only on approaches to accounting, also on how you can credibly claim and report the reductions that are not kind of automatically captured in a GHG inventory. So this is where the AIM platform comes in, and AIM has taken on the task of filling these gaps for all sectors, from aviation to steel, agriculture, and everything else in between, wanting to make sure that we have a unified logic for how companies can take credit for interventions with their suppliers in their Scope 3 inventory. But that's a very complex task, and that's why I'm so excited to be here today to support the book and claim community, because we've, the AIM platform has decided to partner with the book and claim community. We're actually going to be treating them as if they are our transport working group. So anything that happens in the book and claim community will seamlessly flow up to the decision making that's happening within the AIM platform. And then similarly, we'll be able to flow down to the work that we're doing within SABA. So by kind of bringing us all together to work on these kind of complex but very important tasks, I think having kind of this tiered approach or this hierarchy of organizations working on, similar issues but in full coordination with each other is really going to be a game changer in terms of how we can speak to the existing standards and the existing kind of climate norm setting bodies with one voice, explaining to them the importance of the work that we're doing and demonstrating the impact of that work. So just to give one final example, and then I'll pass it back to you, Quentin. Within the SABA community, we've just recently issued our second joint procurement request for proposals for our joint procurement. And whereas the first one, the request was for 25,000 tons of CO2 reduced in 1 year. In the second procurement, we've already reached 165,000 tons. So we have far surpassed our own expectations for being able to ignite interest in investing in SAF and supporting customers' interest in investing in SAF. But it's important, if we're going to continue to grow this impact, that the rules and the guidance and the systems that folks are following and using are aligned and are transparent and credible. And that's where the book and claim community comes in, is helping us make sure that we have those rules in place, again, not just for aviation, but for all of the transport sector. Thanks a lot for inviting me here. And I'm really excited to get this work going and see what we all can do together to grow decarbonization efforts in the transport space.
Awesome. Appreciate that. That's very, very cool to get some of those details on the specific activity. And congrats on getting that momentum going. One of the themes that I appreciate you both mentioning, besides activity and your overall excitement and dedication to this space, was the idea of alignment, especially in what you just said there, Kim. Bears looking back to some of the primary roots, still kind of answering this question of context as well as, you know, why this community. One of the mileposts and flags in the ground was work out at the Climate Week, all the way back in 2022. Seems like a long time ago, right? The explicit goal of this session was to identify key directions and areas where the various participants were generally aligned and are still generally aligned around book and claim. Agreement was found on, you know, key elements such as what a system should include, what elements are building blocks for any sort of book and claim system. What sort of guidance do we need on how to develop robust book and claim? What to do next? How to identify these challenges? What paths forward appear to be most promising around said challenges? If anyone wants, you know, a good brief history and some candid takes on the book and claim state of the conversation, this is a pretty good document to explore. But that energy that was created around that alignment needed a place to go, and that inertia was a core motivator in subsequent conversations that took place kind of within this container, as well as ad hoc outside of it, and that energy needed more of a formal place to land. You know, so that Climate Week itself also wasn't a random event, not for SFC or RMI or any of the other folks, you know, who were there. It's just a brief look at kind of why Smart Freight Center is involved to this degree in this work. You know, it sits amid pretty consistent dedication to this space and related spaces over a decade of experience. A few of the milestones that led to this Secretariat mandate far back to 2014. Much of SFC's expertise and inertia stems from the pioneering GLEC framework, which rapidly became the best practice for calculating and reporting emissions for freight and transportation and logistics. Through to 2020, specific SFC guidance on insetting, 21 mode-specific insetting guidance for sustainable aviation fuel, responding to a lot of pioneering efforts and need that was expressed in the aviation space. This mode-specific work left the door open to define the multimodal market-based mechanism guidance. Again, has its roots in 21, open for comment at various points, I think through 22, and though the topic of an accounting framework is a close relative of the community and will undoubtedly come up in its work areas, that has its own report and will be released by SFC shortly at the end of this month. All this stewardship and expertise set the stage for our involvement with many collaborators, of course, as well. That's just a little bit about how we got to the press release last week and this book and claim launch where we are today. So to speak a little bit to RMI's place, passing this off to my colleague Esther.
Hello, everyone. Esther here from RMI. Before I dive into what we have achieved with Book and Claim, I would like to just give a brief intro on RMI. Funded as the Rocky Mountain Institute, we are an independent nonprofit organization that transforms the global energy system through many market-driven solutions. And we work in the world's most critical geographies and engage businesses, policymakers, communities, and other NGOs to secure a clean and zero carbon future. So with that, as Andrew mentioned before, we started exploring the book and claim application in sustainable aviation fuel since the early stages. Our goal was to scale the use of SAF through SAF-C purchase and mobilizing the corporate demand that can contribute to the SAF premium in exchange of the emission reductions and broader environmental claims. So in January 2019, we co-founded the Clean Skies for Tomorrow initiative and released the SAF-C concept framework in 2021. On that same year, as Kim mentioned, RMI formed the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance with EDF, where our focus has been on the design of the SAF-C system in collaboration with the broader aviation ecosystem. And this has led to a couple more milestones along the way, including the publication of the SAF-C accounting and reporting guidelines and the design of a SAF-C registry. We released the registry guide and rulebook for public consultation in 2022, and we were hoping to launch the beta version later this year. As Kim also briefly mentioned, the SABA has announced the first joint procurement of SAF certificates through the SAF-C system that we've designed. And with this success, there will be a larger multi-year procurement efforts going into it. While we continue to make strides in the aviation sectors, our colleagues on the maritime shipping team has also been working to develop the book and claim system to support the decarbonization of the maritime industry. And this initiative has been really made possible through a collaborative effort as well, funded by the Danish Maritime Fund and in partnerships with the Maersk Mc-Kinney Moller Center for Zero Carbon Shipping, Danish Shipping, and the Maersk Oil Trading. Just about over a month ago, we released comprehensive reports on the maritime book and claim system. We also hosted an informative webinar and is currently in the process of kickstarting the pilot programs to further test and refine the maritime book and claim system. So really glad that we are having this opportunity to jointly working with SmartFreight Center on the book and claim initiative and launch this community so that we can all collectively working on this. With that, I think I will pass it back to my colleagues.
Right on. Thanks, Esther. So hopefully that answers a little bit of the more of the question, not only of why now for this community, but why was RMI and SFC asked to lead. We want to be here to foment conversation and really just link to this unique organizational experience so that we are here to steward this conversation of this community. Again, not the only conversation, but a set of these overall conversations. So let's see what a little bit more of the question of what we are working on and how in the next section with the 4 work areas. Thinking back to that Climate Week conversation that I was mentioning before, the question is, how can we involve? How can we build on the energy and activity that was present to further alignment? And work and need coalesce around 4 specific work areas: reporting and targets, certification, registries, and related applications like software solutions, for example, and capacity building and communication, a very important 4th rail, which we are doing right now. So from reporting and targets, it's apparent that organizations that provide or are procuring low emission transportation, we've heard a few examples of some of them and some of that energy tonight. It's pretty clear that through a robust book and claim chain of custody system, they're also seeking the ability to report on that low emission transportation in their GHG emission inventories. Also wanting to count them towards their achievement of emissions reduction targets and really value that entire intervention. So greater alignment here in this space and in this work area increases that acceptance. Also increases the chances book and claim activity can really signify a meaningful emissions saving intervention across the supply chain. So with this as the goal, Secretariat's going to be facilitating consistent and coordinated engagement with emissions inventory and target setting standards, as well as those emissions accounting guidances that exist out there. Work area 2, also a very key component of book and claim systems. Shining a light and searching for consistency in claims of compliance has yielded some gaps, and further exploration ensures that the stakeholders who are involved in this work, in this process, avoid unnecessary delay and friction in the overall book and claim process. Make sure we're all working from the same playbook and can be more effective. So the Secretariat and the community is going to be investigating and, where appropriate, pursuing alignment across these approaches for certifying claims about organization compliance and doing so along the line of existing best practices. And Esther, I believe, is going to tell us a little bit about registries.
Thank you, Quentin. Yeah, the next two working areas is one is the registry and related applications, where we are thinking about questions like do we need a potentially recognition framework for registries? What would be the standards look like? What are the requirements for recognition, and how we can collectively prevent the registry double counting? Questions like such, we see the importance to really facilitate coordinations among the registries and potentially explore the applications and interactions with other software platforms and solutions as well. The last one is capacity building and communication. This is where more broad and strategically, what are the communications that are currently going on? How can we make it more inclusive and collaborative? And what conversations are still missing in the space so that we can, continue to progress with the book and claim approaches. What are the key messages that we can all align on, and we're well positioned to craft and send to the broader community and the stakeholders that we would like to engage with. So with that, I would like to go a step further into our ideas on how we can convey and facilitate with everyone in this community. So Quentin, if you can jump to the next slide. Thank you. With that, to support really convening of the key stakeholders and everyone else in this room, we were thinking to design a 4-step process to implement, where we want to set the baselines for the community, identify what are the needs that we have share in common, and then establish a goal that we can really stick to and facilitate the progress towards that. Just giving a little bit more details when we're talking about setting the baselines. This involves, reviewing the works that has been done so far in this area, and bringing everyone especially newer participants up to speed, and established a norm and common language that we can all understand and use. I see a couple like Slido questions about, specific terms. Those are exactly what we want to achieve with the community work moving forward, so that we can have that common baseline and language. So the second step with the common baseline, we're hoping that we can identify what is the existing gap in the work, and what additional work is needed to improve the book and claim applications. With that, we would have a clearer goals and milestones in mind. So to see what areas we should target more, even within each working areas, there are specific topics that maybe we can prioritize and make sure that they are properly scoped with the specific objectives, so that we can align with the broader goals. Hopefully with all the 3 steps previously, we can facilitate the process and address the need that we really need to align us with the established goals. So And the Secretariat has been thinking and considering a potential 4-session community convening workshops in late July, in which each session corresponding to a work or area that we've mentioned before. This workshop will provide us a good opportunity to really discuss in depth and allowing all of you who are interested to share your perspectives, ask critical questions so that we can address the challenges and really contribute all those towards the following facilitations that we need with some key stakeholders in the space. Cool. Awesome. So with that, you might be wondering, how to get involved with our community work. There are 2 main ways. The first one is our newsletter. Giving a second for the slides to go into it. Great. So if you can go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletters to stay updated and receive calls to actions by following it. We will continue to provide some valuable content and information about booking claim applications and knowledge through it. And you might expect the first newsletters to come from us around June the 15th. So with the newsletters that you can keep updated, we also have a contact us form. This is for folks who are more interested in getting involved in the specific work areas and work streams. Please fill it up on our website by June 22nd. It would take about a couple minutes. Just tell us about you, your organization, which work areas are you interested in, could be one or multiple. And we're hoping to invite you to join the conversations specifically in those work areas. And events such as the community convening workshop that I mentioned in late July, we will also send you invitations to that. So after the deadline of June 22nd, we will have received your interest to measure that out and probably planning to respond to you in early July so that what is the timing and formats for the upcoming events, such as the community convening sessions. Cool. Just to sum it up here. First, please, sign up for the newsletters if you want to follow our community updates. Fill in the contact us form if you want to get engaged in specific work areas. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate. Just reach out to us through our Secretariat email. And yeah, stay tuned. We really hope that you are as excited as we are about this progress and the potential of the community work, and we're really looking forward to collaborate with you all. So with that, I will pass it to Quentin.
All right, like I said, this is a community launch, so let's consider the champagne bottle broken on the bow of the ship here for this community, and we are launched. We really appreciate all of you being here to celebrate and to see how we can get involved. Really, this starts the meat of the work, or the veggie alternative of the work sandwich as we move forward into these 4 work areas. Different ways to get involved, hear about the work kind of at the newsletter level, or get involved in the work areas. Wanted to hop into the Q&A and see what people have to say here. So Daisy, there we are, and back to it. Yeah, there were a number of different questions. I see about like 60 total activities on here, so really appreciate you all hopping in. Feel free to jump in there and say anything else as you're going through. Some of the specific questions to folks who are working on fuel supply specifically. Don't know the answer to that question, but that might be something to ask them specifically offline. I think a few of the questions circle around what the focus is of this group kind of in the voluntary space and greater acceptance and really questions of where this is going to go Even a question of, you know, book and claim is a hot topic and very discussed, especially by regulators. Why? You know, again, because we're focusing on this voluntary space, you know, not try and get into certain topics of regulation or otherwise. But one of the things that is very indicative is even with certain questions still being up in the air, certain working groups, you know, being in process, the demand and recognition of book and claim is clear, and people are still working on book and claim systems. People are still actively recognizing that they want to engage other folks to cooperate on decarbonization interventions in the heavy transport space, and it is that alignment really that we are trying to carry forward. And by doing more alignment and by focusing on what agreement there is, best practices, and how to execute these projects well together, you know, I think the acceptance and the inertia will only build. Let's see. Is book and claim going to be used more for scope 1 or scope 3? You know, that is also a question that, you know, I am definitely not the one who's going to answer that. That's really going to be determined by a lot of the activity of book and claim out there in the wild. It's going to be up to you, the practitioners of book and claim. And some of that, some also of the accounting questions. I know some of you are attentive to SFC's multimodal and market-based guidance coming out. Those types of accounting questions are not going to be able to be answered here. You know, or just don't have the space to go into or adequately treat some of those specific accounting questions. But stay tuned with SFC's communications moving forward. Let's see, can you please answer the top two questions? We are working how closely? I mean, that's I guess a relative question. You know, we are involved in this community overall, is involved in many different capacities with all of the registry and target organizations. You know, some of those sessions are again out currently for debate and discussion. Encourage you also to touch base with us on specific concerns about those groups, and we'll try and raise them as best we can. There have been certain formal relationships and cooperation announced. Some of that was announced at SFC's Smart Freight Week back in April, and we're working as closely as we can with these groups.
Quentin, I see Dan's got a hand up, so maybe Dan, if you wanted to chime in, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, thanks. I just these two top questions that are trending up here. I don't know if you see the same screen we do, Quentin, but we see like the top 4 questions, and the ones with the most likes by far really relate to integration with greenhouse gas protocol and SBTI. And those are two of the questions that, frankly, served as the fundamental driving force for the development of this community. We have stakeholders telling us almost on a daily basis that these market-based measures need to be accepted as counting towards science-based targets for them to be valid for our multinational stakeholders. And similarly, there's a lot of questions and concerns about exactly question number 2, how is greenhouse gas protocol going to address this? The short answer is we don't know. That reporting and targets work stream or work area that Quentin outlined, the first one of the core functions of that is for us to have a consolidated voice when engaging with greenhouse gas protocol and SBTI and other civil society organizations on these issues specifically. Now, these organizations we've been in communication with through a variety of different means for years, as have other presenters on this webinar. what we're trying to do in part with this community, like I say, is have a consistent and consolidated message to those organizations and others about the need for a rigorous, transparent, and defensible market-based approach to greenhouse gas emissions accounting. So the take home is, yeah, those are the two core questions. That's part of why reporting and targets is work area number one. We don't have the answer. Many of you who have been tracking this space for a while know that Greenhouse Gas Protocol and SBTI don't have the answer, their final answer yet. But what we're trying to do in part through this community and this organization is in a meaningful way send messaging about the importance of this kind of approach to accelerate transport decarbonization and to figure out in collaboration with those organizations how we can meet the needs of the accountants and meet the realities of the market to come full circle to those market constraints that I started with. That's a long way of saying they're valid questions. They're key questions that led to the formation of this community. We don't have the answers. Part of the reason that we want you here is so that we as a community can engage more directly and in an aligned manner with these organizations. Hopefully that's enough to at least acknowledge that we're on it.
Yeah, and I guess the shortest answer I probably should have given also at the beginning is we look forward to seeing you in that work area of reporting and targets. You know, we want to take this energy and these being popular questions and really, you know, get down to working together on them. So we invite you to again express interest and join that work area and let us know how you're practicing and chewing on the same questions. I'm also gonna pop one up, just a few other questions of book and claim in setting mass balance concept. Could you define the terms and parameters? That's going to be a little bit of what we're doing through some of the educational material, newsletter, is going back to some of the basics and pointing to specific terms, whether it's the ISO definition of book and claim or simply just how it's been used. Also, and definitely invite you to check out some of the other publications that RMI mentioned. We mentioned there are pointing, of course, to plenty of resources outside of our organizations. There are a lot of very solid tools out there. Another question: air and maritime were mentioned. Will road freight transport be part of the focus as well? Yes, most definitely. There have been some very, very compelling uses of in setting and book and claim, as well as registries and other related software solutions coming forth in the road freight sector. So yes, that is a focus. And I guess even a better answer is it's not particularly that we are trying to focus on air and maritime, but they are sectors where there's a lot of activity, and that was indicative back in even 2021 of where there needed to be some of the guidance initially on the mode specific accounting, which is why you saw a lot more of activity there. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Best projections for book and claim units total volume. I don't have the answer to that type of question, but that's something we'd love to explore. And there are some other communities, out there, clean air transport through SSC or other aviation sectors that have a little bit of a bead on what those volumes could potentially be. Does ground transportation sector really need a book and claim solution? Don't know if that's adequately responded with a yes or a no, but insofar as you, the community, would like to transact and utilize book and claim, we want to make sure we are supporting the tools to be available for you. And again, the multimodal tools are going to support that type of work. Any other kind of different questions coming in here? Interesting question on inter-region transfer. Again, I'm not going to try and answer this specific question about what's allowed or not, but I think it's helpful to highlight just the the type of demand that's out there, as well as the attention that practitioners should put in the space on when they're engaging a book and claim, how these transactions are going to be bound, and certain of the norms around such types of activities. So really appreciate that question, and more on that, also more in the specific work area zones as well.
If I may, Quentin, I'm going to step in on, I see a trend in some of these questions, like that last one you just spoke to, really focus on the specifics of greenhouse gas emissions accounting questions, boundary questions, principal questions associated with the allocation of the greenhouse gas emissions footprint or profile of a transportation solution. So I'll just clarify, we are still moving forward with accounting specific work. And actually, in 2 weeks, we'll be releasing a multimodal greenhouse gas emissions accounting framework that explains how to do this stuff in a market-based measures context. So some of these accounting specific questions are certainly valid questions. And to those, I point people literally to the release of an accounting framework that SFC will be publishing in 2 weeks. So great questions on accounting, valid questions on accounting, related to the community, but the nuts and bolts of greenhouse gas emissions accounting for transportation supply chains are directly addressed in this accounting framework that will be released in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I'm glad to see the questions tracked. A lot of the energy and excitement for this space. I know some of the answers maybe were a little bit more pointed to, hey, get involved in the work areas, but that's really why we're here. And there's going to be a lot of energy in the subsequent conversations between you and your colleagues, between other folks. We know a lot of people weren't able to be here for time constraints, being in other geographies of the world, or being just very busy on a Thursday morning, afternoon, evening. So we're excited to see the expressions of interest. Really take stock of those who are interested in working in some of these work areas, chewing on these questions, like acceptance, like volumes in certain spaces, like the necessity or alignment in other modes of transportation. So really, the goal is to keep these questions open-ended and work on them with you. And we really thank you. Thank you for being here. Having upwards almost of 200 people involved in a book and claim conversation really shows that we're all here to make this work. We're all here to work on book and claim together and get involved to support heavy transport decarbonization. Thanks so much for the energy. It's really exciting to see, and we look forward to working with you in the coming months. Shoot us a note, sign up for the newsletter, contact us with your work area, and we really appreciate your support. Everybody, have a good day.